I can do arrows or
Okay.
this. Face is concerned about the volume.
Yeah,
He's gonna be right. Yeah, either way, we can use it. It's good to go. I'll call you.
Yeah, please do.
Over there, I see something.
Yep.
Have a minute or two.
Oh, good. That would be nice. Oh, no, I didn't know that. Well, we've gone live. So we're live.
So you guys just worry about me, but I want you to set okay, you're on YouTube now. You're like,
Wow.
you calmed it down. Tell us when you want us to start.
Oh, you better show me too. I usually use the clicker, but So if you'd like, you can use this little arrow to move forward and back, or you can use these little arrows, whichever you prefer. It's pretty fancy though. It's a nice little guy. And I think there's a little pointer on there too. Oh, here's the pointer. Show me the pointer. It's this little button, the red button. Adorable. Look at that. Okay, thank you. Fancy. All right, let me see. And then
We had a cat.
I wish my cats were here. Okay. Okay. Cool. Not to do that, but you're sitting up front. Heck yeah. Heck yeah, girl. Gotcha. Oh, please, please. And I think we should take it. Oh, yes. She is so tough.
Oh, I know. I saw that, and I was going to try to get in and do that. I was going to that. Oh,
Oh, I'm sure it is.
oh.
Whoa. Of course they do. Wow. Oh boy. Yeah. Well, good luck. We'll be thinking about it. Too bad you could have a great shelf line. Shelf line to service.
Hello, everybody. We are going to get started. If everybody wants to grab a seat, I hope lunch was good. And now we're all nice and full, and we're going to turn the lights out on you. Sorry. But it is a great pleasure for me to be able to today introduce two of my favorite people in the whole world, Phyllis and Michelle. So Phyllis today is going to talk a little bit about our liberal arts program and be able to sort of show you the other side of what our students experience here now that you've seen what happens in studios. So without further ado, we're in for a treat. Phyllis, I'm just going to hand this right over to you. Thank you. And Phyllis is the chair of liberal arts.
Welcome to Kansas City, y'all. Welcome to Kansas City Art Institute. Yeah, my name is Phyllis Moore. There's proof there. And I'm here to talk about the role of liberal arts. I think about liberal arts as a long conversation. Is this good? I think of it as a long conversation, and our core required courses as an introduction to that long conversation about art and ideas. So our required core course is the first year seminar, which many of you will be signing up for this weekend, I understand. And the History of Thought 1 and 2 classes and the History of Thought 1 and 2 classes, which form our core, introduce people to basically the greatest hits, in terms of ideas in the world. In art history, from the ancient world, basically from the Venus of Willendorf to Karen Finley, to the contemporary times, to Karen Finley and what she did with that sweet potato in Chicago that day. From Plato to Nietzsche, from Shakespeare to Hume and Hegel, from Rousseau to Descartes and Darwin, those ideas, from Kant to Kendrick Lamar, who just got a Pulitzer, first rap artist to get a Pulitzer, well-deserved. I think Kanye is tweeting his book of philosophy this week. I'm not sure if we'll incorporate that into the liberal arts curriculum, but it's there in the universe. We try to expose people to all of the best ideas. You know, the wheel, that was pretty good. You know, painting a tube, that was, you know, worked out for Van Gogh anyway. And then allow that to be the context for students thinking about the global history of ideas and maybe their own templates for which they lay the basis of their knowledge on. And it allows, we give them a vocabulary so that they can enter into the conversation about art and ideas and take part in the contemporary art world. So from Aristotle to, honestly, to my Aunt Elma, we teach. I want to tell you about her. She was rich. I was told to put my shoes and socks on when we were going to go visit her for the first time for Sunday breakfast. And I was excited because our family had not been able to afford we had to stop the payments on the encyclopedia. So all knowledge in our household ended with the letter G, actually. So she had the whole set, and I was excited at that age to see that. But what floored me was the breakfast table. I came from a place where there's basically what the food on your plate was one color. So I saw many colors. I saw sausages of many sizes, whole trays and platters, the profusion of food on that table I was not accustomed to at that time. And I laid my eye on this little, anybody in this room is too young to remember, log cabin syrup used to come out in a little glass log cabin. Seriously? Oh, thank you. And with a little cork, you know, where you would pour out, and it was in the center of the table next to this pile of, again, pancakes with colors in them, blue, yellow, and I just trained my eye on that and wondering where I could get a straw to draw that syrup out more quick, and reached my hand across the table. My Aunt Alma, not unkindly but firmly, put her hand on my arm, scooped out some scrambled eggs, put them on my plate, and said, "First things first, baby girl, you've got to lay your base." That's what I believe we do in liberal arts. Chance, as Louis Pasteur says, chance favors the prepared mind. So we want to introduce people to this long conversation to prepare them so that they can make decisions on their own. So these are the core courses. Like I said, the first year seminar you'll be signing up for starting this weekend, and you'll have a lot of choice. We have over 200 classes in liberal arts, and so one of our strengths is the choice. So as a first semester freshman, incoming freshman, these are some of the seminars that you can read the course descriptions. You'll be given the course descriptions to choose from. It's a pretty wide range. Once you do those core courses, then above and beyond that, you would be taking 3 courses in art history and then 1 each in history, literature, philosophy, the sciences. Beyond that, 2 courses from any of those disciplines, including our Spanish. Oh my gosh. I don't know. I just know we don't. Oh my, I'm so sorry. We should. Let's do that. Other people do it. We offer Japanese and Chinese courses. I don't know where that came from. And again, a wide array of choices. As you can see, everything from in art history, from African, Asian, Chinese, Japanese, Native art of the Americas, to oceanic and Aboriginal art. The Islamic art and architecture class is extremely popular. Art history electives on the 3,000 level. Is there anything, Michelle, on this list that you don't teach?
No, that's all of them.
Yeah. Michelle teaches who you're about to get to know a little bit. Michelle teaches ancient and Renaissance classes, but another point I'd like to make about the liberal arts program here that's different about other programs is that the people teaching are makers themselves, or are, as you know, Michelle is a fiber artist. Her last sabbatical, she knitted buildings. Architecture is another one of her interests. But she's teaching her history of textiles class as a fiber artist and knowing processes. She teaches the history of ceramics class similarly. Although she's not a ceramic artist herself, she is intimately involved with the processes. So our students ask different kinds of questions. And in their art history classes, it's more than the dates and the names and the ism. It's how did that artist make that blue? What's the recipe for that particular? So the teachers in liberal arts are, if they're not makers or artists themselves, are extremely deeply interested in process and how those are achieved. The history electives, again, as you can see, are extremely, the choice is extremely wide, and this is, well, they're wild too. Okay, I'll go with wild and wide. But anything from Kansas City jazz to Vietnam as myth and metaphor, modern Chinese history, gendering the Holocaust, the topics in art as history. Again, that's a peculiar category, peculiar and particular to the Kansas City Art Institute because, for instance, in screening history, history is taught through the lens of film and art itself. Literature, you can do your Moby Dick, you can do your Whitman and Dickinson, you can take Shakespeare with me, but we also have subject-driven amalgamations in courses like the Literature of Distress, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, The Witch, in Literature and Society, Monsters in the Closet. It's a wide menu of choices. Our creative writing workshops, the usual narrative, poetry, fiction and nonfiction techniques, and then experimental and subject-driven classes taught by, these are some pictures of books written by the people who teach these courses. Jordan Stempelman, who is named by the Huffington Post as one of the top 200 advocates of American poetry in this country. He's on his 9th book of poetry. He's teaching these classes. Writers are teaching writing to writers. Cyrus, his new book, Cyrus Console, his new book, Romanian Notebook, was just given a lengthy review in the LA Review of Books. I don't know who that is, but she wrote a book that her mother could not pronounce. My mother, a compendium of skirts. My mother would say, "Oh, honey, I'm so proud of you in that condominium of skirts that you wrote." Sometimes it'd be the condiment of skirts, you know, because there was, I don't know, so much mayonnaise in them, I'm not sure. Ann Boyer, her new book, Garments Against Women, Ann Boyer was just, she just received, it was the Cy Twombly Award, which was invented basically because they wanted to support some poet in the United States. They chose Anne. And then right on top of that, just 2 weeks ago, she won the Whiting Award for Poetry of $50,000. And she's working on her next book, a memoir, which she teaches, of course, in memoir writing. So that's what the point I'm trying to make is the people here, this is a book that came out a couple of years ago. Chapter 5 was about Ann Boyer. So these are people who are in the classroom, you know, with students who know what they're talking about. And I think more importantly are collaborators more than lecturers, you know, people interested, like I said, in the process. And then again, a lot of choices from Eastern philosophy to social practice in your philosophy choices. The museum and its mythos is a fabulous course, and students also can, it's not up here, students can also take a course with Michael Schonhoff over at the KCAI Crossroads Gallery. He's the curator there, and it's a course in Introduction to Museum Studies, basically is what that is. Science, I'm very excited. We have a new teacher, Karen Staling, who's teaching this course in DNA, how DNA stuff works. Again, this person is the head of the biology department at Stowers Institute of Medical Research. across the way here. And she has her students in there, you know, figuring out the DNA of a strawberry, etc. She is taking them to her lab next week. And so again, the proximity, we have small classes, 15, 20, 22, you know, the proximity of students with their teachers and what their teachers are doing, and those shared interests, I think, are what distinguishes our program from maybe some others. In social science, you can take everything from what I call Peaches and Cream, Milton Katz's fabulous course on peace and conflict resolution, and can I get a witness? Could we use a little? Could we use a little peace and conflict resolution? To Western attitudes towards death and dying, Jordan Stempelman's course, which was written up on the pitch recently. It's such a popular course. Students say it should be made a core required course. And then I don't see Spanish up there, do you? I believe we're working on that. Students can also get their liberal arts, again, back to this idea of choice. They can earn their liberal arts degrees by taking internships. Bookmark Press, they put out 4 to 6 fine books there across the street. The Nelson Atkins, the paid Durwood scholarships over there are fabulous. We even set up one in Paris. This is Sammy Fries typing. At the typewriter, James Joyce typed a lot of Ulysses on at Shakespeare and Company in Paris. Damn, right? Sorry. I don't know where that comes from. And then you can also do a direct and individual study. If there's an interest a student has and we don't teach it, and we've got somebody on staff whose expertise is in that area, then you can come up with your own course and work one-on-one in a directed study with one of these Jaspers. Now, who wouldn't want to work with one of these fabulous people? You can also earn your liberal arts credits by going away, which I highly recommend. Italy, Saatchi. Can I say this is on top of the Museum of Applied Arts in Budapest. That's some Jolnai tile, which all the students knew about because they took Michelle Fricke's history of textile class, his history of ceramics, sorry. But you see those little yellow figures up there, and that pipe is going up. So that's on top of a building that is 10 times as high as this building. And the only reason we're up there is because the curator there noticed how polite our students were and how respectful and how in awe they were of what they saw in the museum. So she said, I've got a key. And she took us up on the roof. We had to go through this little fairy tale door. And you understood nobody gets this, you know. We get up there and there's this tile and all this stuff. And one of the students said, the curator, why would they go to so much trouble to do all this detail and make it so beautiful? We're the only people probably who ever saw it except for the person who did it. And the curator said, what the artist said was, God will see it. It's like, okay. This is my travel writing class. I don't know what they're laughing about. That is a sad ass book. But they are joking around. They're in Paris. So taking a study abroad is one way to get your credits. There are 2 student publications which the students do completely on their own. One is the literary magazine, Sprung Formal. Used to be Spring Formal, but it's art school, so next year it'll be Sprang Formal. But this is taught in a class we offer every spring called the Literary Magazine, where you learn about the history of the literary magazine and you produce a literary magazine. So every spring this comes out. It won. There's an outfit called the AWP. Outfits count sounds like there's a cowboy in it, but there's not. AWP, the Association for Writers and Writing Programs, that governs all writing programs in America and Canada, and they awarded our magazine the best design for all undergraduate literary magazines in 2008, and we've got runner-up twice. But this is the cover. That cover is a student painting, and then the other publication is the compendium. All the art history and creative writing majors in there and double majors in their senior year get together and put together their artwork and their writing. And it's called the compendium. And then they give a reading as part of the BFA show on the last day of class. We also, into this long conversation I've been talking about, we bring people from the outside. So every spring we bring in a visiting writer, reader, thinker. We've got Dana Joya, who was a poet, but at the time the head of the National Endowment for the Arts one year. Ben Lerner, Paul Collins, Fred Moten, cultural critic and thinker. That is my old ex-boyfriend. They come for nothing. Film critics, Temple Grandin, y'all might know, Animals in Translation, her book. And this fellow down here at the bottom, Jace Clayton, known as DJ Rupture, was our visiting writer this year. I also want you to know how great our students are. Students are allowed to apply to give and present their papers every year. It's the 5th year going on, the Art History Symposium. And this is Davin Roberson giving his talk, Western Challenges to the Andean Textile. Natalie Spicker. I mean, look at that title, y'all. Enticing fortune and trap and evil, interpreting the symbology of Coptic motifs. I mean, I am impressed just with the, I learned so much from this. Hannah Bernardini on Thomas Hirschhorn. And this is Kiana Henley doing her paper on architecture as social impetus. And it just grows every year. This year, it was standing room only. These students not only deliver their paper, they answer questions. They give a prolonged question and answer at the end. And faculty from across the program are in there asking questions, and they deliver. So these are what we are hoping that people come away with. Being able to simply communicate and express your ideas and be critically thinking about what you're thinking about, be able to research and find out if you don't know something beyond Wikipedia, beyond Google, where you can find it. Be risk takers and use your creative thinking to solve problems and demonstrate a cultural literacy necessary to be an informed person of the universe and to absolutely intellectual curiosity, right? Those are our desires. And once you have that, once we have laid your base with that, then, what can you do? I've had so many people ask me over the years, what do you do with a degree in creative writing? What do you do with a degree in art history? What do you do with a BFA from the Kansas City Art Institute? Well, here's Claire Branken. She went off to Ireland. She was accepted to every program she applied to, but she went and got her master's in philosophy of fiction in Ireland at the Oscar Wilde Center at Trinity College, the first college in Ireland to offer a master's in creative writing. And this is her in Paris. And then she got her dream job. So now she's project manager for the Oxford University Press, special projects manager, and she can work at home, so she can be anywhere. Ian Snyder majored in creative writing and minored in printmaking, but he's making his living off of his video games. Go check out The Floor is Jelly. He's got his own soundtrack that is selling nicely on Amazon. I saw Casey last night. Vogue magazine is writing, the recent online version has an article on Casey's latest essay, but he left out of here with 2 books. Mother Ghost got a starred review from, not everybody get that starred review, y'all. Meaning, I have never gotten a starred review, but here, well, it's just something to strive for, but here my students are getting them. This is his book, which was a handmade book. He's publishing an anthology. He's doing very well. Ryan McDonald is now teaching. That was his first book. He's now teaching painting and writing at O'Dowd College in Maine. This man, Devin Schiller, he knows things. He's getting a doctorate. He got his master's in media arts history in Austria at the University of the Danube. And now he's in a PhD program. He's in a doctoral program studying stuff I can't pronounce, y'all. He knows more about cultural semiotics than I will ever know. And just one more example in the middle, this is Adriana Anita Arteaga. She left out of here with a minor in painting, a major in creative writing, and hooked up with this fellow from Burkina Faso who built this school. And she's doing stuff like this now. She was that outfit, the KCAI architects were invited last year, it's a big honor, to London to put something together for this Serpentine Pavilion. That's what she's doing with a creative writing degree, you know. So I'm just saying, she's doing stuff like that. I'm just saying, when people ask me, what do you do with a BFA in creative writing or art history or a BFA at all? I say, you know, what can you do with it? What can't you do with it? You know, I mean, seriously. So these are some fabulous students. It's my pleasure to, what I want to do now is give y'all a little look into a classroom. So Michelle Fricke, who is the program head of art history, and the Ray Beagle Distinguished Chair of Art History, is going to give you an idea of what it's like to be in one of our art history classes. So she's going to give a mini talk, and then I'm going to return and give a little mini talk on creative writing, what goes on in the classroom. So please fasten your art history seatbelts. This is Michelle Fricke.
Oh, thank you. I have to set a timer because otherwise, blah, 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 blah. If you hear the duck quacking, you know I'm supposed to stop. That's me. And embarrassingly, when the president told me that I was now the Ray Beagle Chair of Art History, my first response was not one of joy. It was, you mean like the dog? So yeah, and Bambi's there going, she likes dogs, she likes dogs. This is a good thing. Okay. My favorite period of art history is the ancient Greeks. And one of the reasons why that's the case is because they love stories more than anybody ever. And every work of art they did tells a story. So I'm going to tell you some stories today from the Greeks. And I've learned that I always have to put up a map because nobody knows where anything is anymore. So that's Greece right there. These are the Cycladic Islands. That's Crete. There's Turkey. Down here is Egypt. Okay, and that way would be Europe. Well, Greece is Europe. Okay. After the fall of the Bronze Age culture, the Mycenaeans, they were plunged into a period that is referred to as the Dark Age. And generally speaking, I don't like that term because it suggests that absolutely nothing was going on. In this case, it's correct. Nothing was going on in Greece at all. And the only art forms that survived were the ones that didn't require patronage, somebody with a lot of money to keep things going, and which could be handed on from father to son or mother to daughter. And so the two media that survived were textiles and ceramics. And while the technical quality of the pieces continued to be very high, they kind of fell backwards in painting, and the Mycenaeans, quite honestly, were never very good painters to begin with, so they didn't have far to fall. This little piece is only about that big, and it just weighs nothing at all. It's just like air with a picture on it. This is typical of what they were doing until the Greeks got themselves organized and started building little towns and establishing governments. And as soon as that happened, they started telling their stories. And this first period is called the geometric period because it's not at all unusual when cultures are just getting organized for the artists to rely on forms that are dependable, and geometry is dependable. So this is my personal favorite piece from that period. It's about, between 1000 and 900 BCE, the time during which, if Homer lived at all, he lived during this time. And they found this sculpture, which is about this big. It's ceramic. The body, I keep wanting to touch this. The body of it was thrown on a wheel, right? Okay, right there. That part was thrown. All the rest of it was built. And it's a depiction of a centaur, which is part human, part horse. And for the Greeks, centaurs symbolized all that is out of order. Because one of the things that the Greeks feared most, and in fact, most ancient cultures feared most, was chaos. So they tried to organize in a way that to create a culture that made sense. And they had to have something that symbolized the opposite. And so they chose the centaur as the image of that. And this sculpture must have meant a great deal because it was found in 2 graves. The head was in one grave, the body was in the other one. And they've done a little DNA, and they know that these two, it was the body, or the graves of 2 men, and they were either brothers or father and son, something like that. And before they were buried, they snapped this thing in half and put it in the graves. We know from a little subtle symbolism that this is the centaur Chiron, who was the exception. There's always an exception to every rule, and he was the wise centaur. He's the one who Zeus chose to be the tutor of Apollo and Artemis. And to thank him for doing such a good job, Zeus made him immortal. And if you've ever heard the expression, be careful for what you ask for because you might get it, here's the perfect example. Because this is a really long story, I'm just going to give it really short. But if you've all heard of Hercules, to the Greeks, he was Heracles. And I don't know if you know this or not, but he was a big stupid, just as dumb as a post. And he was out there one day playing with his sword and flipping it all around, and he just lost control, and the thing went flying through the air and hit Chiron right in the knee. And if you look, he's got a gash right there that was built right into the sculpture at the time it was made. And by the way, also look at his hand that's splayed on his hip. He's got 6 fingers. And in Greek culture, that symbolizes wisdom. So we know this is Chiron. Well, he got hit in the knee by Heracles' sword and it wouldn't heal. And he went through God knows how much time suffering and begging to be allowed to die because he didn't have any antibiotics then. So Zeus finally allowed him to trade his mortality with Prometheus and was permitted to die. So this is a story, like a root story of how, a cautionary tale of how you have to be careful what you wish for. And it was so important that these 2 men needed to take it with them into what was the most bleak vision of the afterlife I can imagine. Everybody got to go to Hades. That's a close-up, and we all have to admit, don't we, that he's adorable. A short time after that, Athens being the most important city-state in the area, the Athenians established something called the Dipylon Cemetery, which only means the cemetery with 2 gates. And they started creating these beautiful vases as grave markers. And I'm just showing you one, but they came in a lot of different sizes and a lot of different shapes. And you can tell what kind of a person was buried in that grave because of the shape and the size. If it's a big vase like this one is, I'll tell you about that in a minute, it would have been from someone really wealthy. If it was a little one, but really well done, it was from somebody who had some money, but was kind of cheap. And the shape of it would tell you whether it was a man who was a warrior or an elderly man or a young woman before she was married or a woman after she was married and had children. Each vase had a different shape. And to give you a sense of scale, by the way, there would have been 2 artists, the potter and the painter. And they worked in collaboration and usually produced these things before the customer went in. And then the customer would get to customize what went right there. They would put the story right there. And the story was almost always a funeral scene. This vase I have stood next to, and it's taller than I am. Now, I'm not tall, but I am usually taller than vases. So this thing is over 5'5" and would have been thrown in separate pieces and then joined together, which if any of you are interested in ceramics will know that is really hard to do. The close-up shows the funeral, and there's the deceased, and he gets to be bigger because it's basically his funeral right there. Whoa, 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 run away. Okay, there we go. There's, oh, I'm afraid to touch it now. There, all right, there's the dead guy laying out there, and notice that there's no blank space here. This is called horror vacui, the fear of the empty space. And they just had to fill it up with checkerboards and everything else. And there's the family sitting beneath him and beside him. And then you'll notice all these extra people. Greek funerals back then were very different than funerals today. And trying to restrain yourself, trying to show a little dignity, not recommended in ancient Greece. They wanted to show as much grief as they could, so they would hire professional mourners. So most of the people on this scene didn't even know the guy. And they would show up and they would wail and beat their breasts and tear out their hair. And we now know that they would cut it and then pin it in so it didn't hurt so much. And then they would vomit and faint. And that was the best kind of Greek funeral. And we have it shown on a ton of Greek artwork. And then we get scenes from the Odyssey, like up above where, what's his name? The big guy with the one eye, the Cyclops, captured Odysseus and they got him drunk and poked out his eye and escaped. And they keep telling these wonderful stories like the marriage of Peleus and Thetis, who were Achilles' parents, up on the top of that vase. And there they are, all dressed up in their very best clothes. And I talk about this a lot in the history of fiber class because we don't have any surviving clothes. And it even, oh, by the way, this is the time when writing was developed. And what I love about the Greeks is among the first people to become literate were the artists, because they were cherished in the Greek culture. And then we come to the most formidable storyteller in history. His name is Exekias, and I want to go back in time and have his baby. He apparently was a one-of-a-kind person who not only made the vase, but also illustrated the vase, which is unusual. Usually they work separately. But even if you didn't know that, I think you could tell it, because the shape of the vase and the forms that form the story are in complete harmony. And so the back of the figure on the right echoes the shoulder of the vase. And notice that the vase usually has body parts to identify it: the neck, the mouth, the lip, the shoulder. And notice that on the left, the curvature of the other opponent follows the shape of the shoulder as well. The story here is an unguarded moment. And one of the things that makes Exekias so extraordinary is that he apparently had some connection with the theater in Athens at this time. The Athenians invented drama. They didn't invent plays, but they did invent drama. And Exekias assumed an educated audience. He never spoke down to people. Compare this with 21st century Hollywood movies, if you can stand it. And they're always talking down to us or blowing something up. In this case, he's relying on the fact that either you will know the story because you're aware of your culture, or you can't, and then it's just too bad. And the moment being depicted here, he always picks one moment, the crucial moment. And this moment is when Ajax and Achilles, who were supposed to be on guard in the Greek camp during the Trojan War, for just a minute in the middle of the night, went inside the tent to sit down, and they played a couple games of dice. And while they were in that tent, innocently, spies from Troy got into the camp and killed several of their friends. And they don't know it, but we, the audience, do know that this is the beginning of a decline for both of these men that will ultimately lead to their deaths. It seems innocent, but it's not. When you look up close, remember that these figures are about this big. And Exekias had to carve into the clay before it was fired to create all the patterns on their cloaks. And the cloaks are there because when a man went into battle, if he was killed, his body would lay there perhaps some time, and if the bad guys won, someone might not ever bury you. And to the Greeks, if you weren't buried after you died, your shade would wander restlessly through the world for all eternity, like Marley's ghost. So they wore capes into the battle, hoping that somebody would kindly cover their body if they died. And the embroidered patterns on them were to help them identify who it was, because each family had different patterns. So if you've ever read the Iliad, you hear people on the top of the castle looking down onto the battle yard saying, oh, there's Achilles, there's Ajax, there's Hector, there's Paris, because of the embroidery patterns they had on their cloaks. This is a kylix. This is a wine cup for the ancient Greeks. And in the bowl of that, Exekias painted this story about the god Dionysus, the god of the grape. And he was born of a union between Zeus and a human female. And Zeus's wife was entirely well aware of this, and she was jealous. So she went to the human female and said, he doesn't love you, because if he did, he would show his true self to you. And so the next time Zeus showed up to the woman, She said, you don't love me because if you did, you'd show me your real self. And Zeus, another big stupid, just went, okay. And he fluffed himself all up into his full godhood. And indeed, she dropped dead. So she was pregnant with Dionysus. He grabbed the baby out of her womb. He could have saved her. He didn't bother, but he put the baby or the fetus in his own thigh and then gave birth to Dionysus himself. But because he was half human and half God, he wasn't immortal, and Hera kept killing the baby. And then Zeus would have to get the baby and, you know, bring him back to life. And Hera one day just said, you know, I'm beginning to feel guilty. I keep killing this baby. It's going to give him some kind of a, you know, complex. So let's take him for a sea voyage because he'll love it. And the plan was that the sailors would get him out to sea and kill him and throw him overboard. And then Zeus couldn't bring him back to life. So without mentioning that Zeus made him immortal. And when they got out into the ocean, right before they were going to throw him overboard, Dionysus turned all the potential assassins into dolphins. And that's what you see swimming around the boat. And the forms of the curved mast, the grapevine, the ship, the backs of the dolphins all echo the shape of the vessel. And if you would pick this up and drink out of it, notice where the handles are. If you pick it up right, it's going to look like the ship is sailing right down into your throat. I want to finish with this one, which is my favorite of all of his vases. And what we've got here is the battle between Achilles and Penthesilea. At one point during the Trojan War, they were desperate to end it. Homer says it lasted 10 years. So at one point they thought, okay, let's just make it mano a mano. Best warrior, oh, it didn't quack. Okay, I got to tell you this story. Too bad I'm going over. The best warrior of the Greeks against the best warrior of the Trojans, and Hector was already dead. So Penthesilea, the queen of the Amazons, is there to take over. But it's Greek. Okay, so the guy's going to win. It's just a foregone conclusion. And indeed, there he is plunging his spear into her throat, and she's looking up into her eyes, and here's where the ultimate Greek moment occurs. They look into each other's eyes. They fall desperately in love. But too bad because he just killed her. So, yeah, I'm going to leave it with Exekias, but he is the master storyteller. And that's kind of an excerpt of something that might go on in one of my art history classes.
Okay, so I'm going to cut out some stuff.
They'll start recording, or they'll start playing when we get to the next screen.
Okay.
And then in order that you ask, so you can choose.
Okay, anybody have a 78 record? I teach a course called Minute Fiction. It's a cruel course because students are asked, cruel form, to, in 500 words or less, record, now that I come to think of it, what's the phrase, Michelle? A moment.
A moment of maximum pathos.
A moment of maximum pathos. This is The Wig by Brady Udall. My 8-year-old son found a wig in the garbage dumpster this morning. I walked into the kitchen, highly irritated. I couldn't make a respectable knot in my green paisley tie. And there he was at the table, eating cereal and reading the funnies. The wig pulled tightly over his hair like a football helmet. The wig was a dirty bush of curly blonde hair, the kind you might see on a prostitute or someone who's trying to imitate Marilyn Monroe. I asked him where he got the wig, and he told me, his mouth full of cereal. When I advised him that we do not wear things we find in the garbage, he simply continued eating and reading as if he didn't hear me. I wanted him to take that wig off, but I couldn't ask him to do it. I forgot all about my tie, going to work. I looked out the window. I paced into the living room and back, trying not to look at my son. He ignored me. I could hear him munching cereal and rustling paper. There was a picture or a memory, real or imagined, that I couldn't get out of my mind. Last spring, before the accident, My wife was sitting in the chair where now my son always sits. She was reading the paper to see how the Blackhawks did the night before, and her sleek mussed hair was only slightly longer and darker than the hair of my son's wig. I wondered if my son had a similar picture in his head, or if he had a picture at all. I watched him. He finally looked up at me, but his face was blank. He went back to his reading. So I walked around the table, picked him up, and held him against my chest. I pressed my nose into that wig, and it smelled not like the clean shampoo scent I might have been hoping for, but like old lettuce. I suppose it didn't matter at that point. My son put his smooth arms around my neck, and for maybe a few seconds, we were together again, the three of us. That's the kind of pathos that this moment, an artist on ceramics, an artist in a story can afford. And so I think we have time for maybe one student sample.
The largest cheeseburger in the world. A few years before he passed away, my father took me out to Denny's Beer Barrel Pub in Clearfield, Pennsylvania for my 11th birthday. He thought it fitting for us to eat a cheeseburger that had as many pounds as I had years, and ordered the Beer Barrel Belly Buster. I felt a surge of masculine pride and grinned as the other patrons heard the order. The backs of my heels didn't quite reach the sticky floor, which is littered with discarded straw wrappers, but they knocked against the wood bench that my father and I shared. And I remember hoping the seat would hold us both up after we destroyed the burger. It took 2 servers to bring it to us. They came staggering out on each side of a giant wicker platter which was overflowing with french fries, pickles, and shredded lettuce, barely restrained by 2 thick sesame seed buns set a hunk of meat. It looked like it could have been one of my classmates. We both stared at it for a few minutes. My father took a steak knife in one hand and started slicing away at the burger, like I'd seen him do at Thanksgiving. I instinctively acknowledged his plan and started right away on the very edge he had given me. I flattened the thing out with my palm, compressing ketchup into mustard. Lettuce exploded at the sides, and molten cheese rolled down like tears from the pink meat. We set upon our heaps with a grim determination and paused only to wash it down with a gulp of icy Coca-Cola or to grab a handful of napkins. We never finished it. We didn't even come close. I watched as the waiters lowered the remnants into a large cardboard box. On the way out, we leaned on each other, struggling with the massive container. And as we staggered to the car, we made a promise to each other. We would never, ever, in our entire lives, eat like that again.
John Lee, students. Thank you. Nice to meet you, and have a swell visit here at Kansas City Art Institute.
Hello, everyone. How are you guys doing? Good. Thank you so much, Phyllis and Michelle. We really appreciate it. So next, I'm going to introduce 3 current students, and they will discuss about their transition from high school to where they are at today. And you will hear from Paulina Otero, sophomore in fiber, Reagan Kepsel, junior in ceramics and double major in art history, and Colin Kettler, senior in illustration.
Hello, everyone. My name is Paulina Otero, and I'm going to talk about my experience at KCAI as a freshman and as a sophomore student. It's not. So first of all, I'm going to talk about a little bit about myself and where I come from. I was born and raised in Mexico, and since I was really young, I've been making art. I started painting and drawing since I was 8 years old, and since I was that young, I was painting and drawing, but it wasn't like I took it that serious until my sophomore year of high school, when I decided to go to a boarding school in California. It was in the morning we would work on academics, and in the afternoon we would work in our in art classes. So that was when I really started to take art seriously, and when I decided that I really wanted to keep on my education in the arts. So there I had the chance to take basic classes on painting, sculpture, drawing, mixed media, graphic design, ceramics, and going there really helped me see my path in art and made me realize that my place was somewhere else that wasn't home, that I had to sacrifice being away from home to do arts. It was better for me to stay here, and I had more opportunities. So also from there, I decided, oh, I'm gonna apply to schools here in the US and then see what happens. So there comes the question of how I ended up in KCAI. So I was applying to 8 different schools, and all these people came to my school and gave us presentations about different colleges. But then when KCAI came, I didn't know about the school, but I instantly fell in love with the artwork that was being made in the school. So I was like, oh, why not apply? So I applied to the school. I did my portfolio review. I wrote my essay, and everything kind of like went really smoothly, really well. And the people from KCAI, in comparison to other colleges, really treated me like someone that matters, someone important. They were always really helpful, very nice to me, and like especially as an international student, those things really count, because it's like you're looking for support, like because you're coming from another place, but also in terms of financial aid, the school was always very generous. So here's some pictures of me painting and my graduation, my teacher. This is some of the work I made before I came to KCAI. I used to be a painter, I guess, but KCAI really changed my path in art. It really helped me like realize that I wanted to work with different medium, that I didn't just wanted to stay with painting. So even at that time, you could still see how my work would in the future connect with my practice today. So I was looking at a lot of color, pattern, repetition, fold, fabric, textures, that like textural aspect of painting. So then when I came to the school here, I was like, okay, I'm ready to go into painting, and then just straight to my major, you know? And then they tell me, oh, you have to go through foundations. And I was like, what is foundations? Like, I didn't know that was a thing. So at first it was really hard for me to kind of like, again, go back to drawing, to basic stuff like drawing still lifes, painting, photography, building stuff with really basic stuff like cardboard, chipboard. But even though in that moment I didn't realize how important it was to go through that, like today I appreciate that I went through that, because it helped me perfect my skills, and it helped me had a really good time management, because once it's like really different when you're in high school than when you move to college. In college, you're expected to be in studio all the time. Like studio becomes your first home. I like just went to my room to sleep. So that was really fun, and building those connections with your classmates and just becomes like your family, you know, you make your closest friends, and it's really awesome. Then the second semester, this is some pics of first semester, my painting, my collages, and my friend Hannah. And then the second semester of foundations, it was really fun because we got to have workshops. So they offer various workshops where you get to experiment with different techniques, materials, but also starting to play with concept. And my first workshop, I had the opportunity to have Christopher Spa, who is an architect, and he's really strict. So we were building wood sculptures with these objects that we will build, these components that will come together and form an overall abstract sculpture. So he would come and like break our sculptures, and he was like, you have to do it again until it's perfect. So it was a challenge, but it helped me grow so much as an artist, and it pushed me to become better and to really try to do the best that I can. Then my second workshop, I had Rena Wood, and it was a fiber workshop. So I started to learn how to crochet, how to knit, how to weave, and I really like the aspect of the tactility, the relationship that you create with the material through making. I really like the craft aspect of fibers. So that was kind of like my favorite one. And I was like, oh, fibers, like it's there. Like I was really interested in it and really excited. And then after that one, I took another workshop with Christopher Spa. So that was about building spaces, interiors with concrete sculptures. And I never thought I would be making art with something like concrete, it's so strange, but it was a lot of fun. It was also a challenge because it was all about craft. It was all about staying in studio and just making. So foundations really helped me open my brain to like all these possibilities, all these fields that art can have, not sticking to only one thing. And I think the school is also really helping you like open yourself to all these possibilities, all these paths that you can go into. So going through foundations really made me realize that I was more interested in three-dimensionality, in making in translating my paintings into something three-dimensional. So from there, I decided that I was really interested in fibers, and I chose fibers. So it was kind of like a big step, like saying goodbye to painting. And then I still love painting, but I thought that fibers was the place I would go. It was kind of like the path I should follow. So I chose fibers because of the variety of techniques and the craft-based processes that we learn, creating patterns and reading patterns, embroidering, rug making, and making your own textiles through weaving, through dyeing, through screen printing. Those are only a few of the things that I've learned so far. And turning flat things into something that could be a sculpture or into something that could be a wearable or can cover an entire room. It's something that really attracted me and that has really find my way into who I am as an artist. I get to know myself and why I do certain things. So yeah, this is what I've been making so far my sophomore year. Also, I've been able to this semester experiment with different mediums. So how can fibers connect to other mediums? Like, for example, this semester I took an elective in ceramics. So that's been really fun to translate that pattern, that color into tableware or into a necklace, or still playing with the wearables idea and just repetition of things. So I think that's something that is really awesome about the school is it doesn't matter what major you choose, you're always able to experiment with other mediums. You will always have the chance to just get away from your major and then maybe, like for me, right now I'm making a wood installation and I'm not really using fiber materials, but I'm still like using the knowledge I have from foundations and from all these other classes to apply it to my practice. And then I can still do it. It doesn't matter. Like teachers always encourage you to experiment and to push yourself because you don't want to only stick with one thing. The more you learn, the better. So yeah, people here, I would say, are always really helpful whenever I go to ceramics and I don't know something and my teacher is not there to help me, there will always be a student that will be like, oh, like, do you need help? Like, do you know what you're doing? And I don't know, it's just that community sense that there is in the school because of the size, and it's just everyone is very helpful, very open to help. It doesn't matter like where you come from, what major you're in. Everyone is always really, really helpful and very excited. And yeah, so I would just say, I would just say come here ready to spend a lot of time in studio, to be open to what art may lead you to, because you may come here with an idea and then foundations may change your path, you know? So, yeah. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Reagan Kepsel. I'm a junior at the Kansas City Art Institute, and I'm double majoring in ceramics and art history. I grew up in Topeka, Kansas, about an hour away. Both my parents and grandparents are from rural Kansas. My mom works for the Kansas Lottery. My dad's a middle school principal. And as a little kid, I always knew that I was a little bit different. I played by my own set of rules and lived in my own world. Many of the stories from my childhood often include me being the wild child to never turn down a double dog dare and always wanting to prove people wrong. I attended Shawnee Heights High School, where I was fortunate enough to take sculpture, painting, ceramics courses every semester. I made the ultimate decision of sticking to my passion for art, and I felt confident that my competitive drive and work ethic would lead to a successful and fulfilling career and life. Like many of you in the audience, I was very close with my high school art teachers. I would often ask them for advice about what schools to visit and what steps I could take to strengthen my chance for scholarships. I participated in multiple portfolio days, a summer portfolio camp, scholastic events, and local art competitions. I sent applications to KCAI, a few other private art institutions, and a local state university. I received substantial scholarships from each school, with the state school offering me a full ride. But my teachers suggested KCAI. I remember my painting teacher asking if I wanted to be the most talented person in the room, or if I wanted to be in a room surrounded by people who were as talented or more talented than I was. And I totally prefer the second. She told me that if I went to a local school, that I would feel like another 4 years of high school, and I would just stay very self-driven. But if I chose a school like KCAI, I would be surrounded by talented people, and the curriculum set in place would be competitive, and the institution would provide more resources for me as an artist. In making this decision, I also considered the social aspects of each environment. I felt that KCAI would offer me a more diverse and liberal atmosphere than I had become accustomed to in a local Kansas high school. And the size of the classrooms required more meaningful relationships with faculty and staff at KCAI. So my freshman year in foundations was a very transformative experience. What you see here, one weekend my teacher said, all right, jump as high as you can and mark it on a wall, and this weekend you're gonna build a sculpture as high as that out of bamboo sticks and glue. And so that's what we did. And then we had to experiment with light. Digital and 2D artists and foundations were working sculpturally for the first time. Designers were taking their first figure drawing classes. Sculptors were working with video and performance for the first time as well. My peers and I were all working with new materials and methodologies. The experience was not even just about what we worked with, but how we worked. Foundations breeds this impulsive nature to create, to reach beyond your comfort levels and to embrace making mistakes, then push the envelope on problem solving. The curriculum for foundations also focused on learning new vocabulary through critical dialogue. So in this performance piece, this image is actually upside down. I hung from a rock climbing harness strapped to chains around the ceiling and foundations. And then everything was from recycled wedding dresses and rugs and bedspreads. The first semester is spent with one professor, whereas the second semester is divided into 3 different, more specified workshops. I participated in a painting, sculpting, and fiber workshop. Here are a few examples of a workshop that utilized screen printing, embroidery, block printing on fabric. These are processes that I never would have been exposed to if I had gone immediately into my major and not taken foundations, and they still affect my studio practice to this day. I'm also continually inspired by my classmates' work and often find myself walking through the campus for inspiration. There's also the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art and the Kemper Museum for Contemporary Art basically on campus. A few other major skills taught in foundations include being trained in the wood shop on campus, workshops on how to properly photograph your work, learning Photoshop, InDesign, Illustrator, and Media Pro, all provided by KCAI. I was able to establish relationships with people going into photography, illustration, animation, graphic design, painting and sculpture, and more. These relationships are very important and useful in the art world because when you're unfamiliar with a new process, you always have someone on campus that's willing to help you or collaborate with you. Sophomore year in ceramics, which is the major I chose, is mainly based on the figure. Here's a life-size self-portrait bust from my first semester. And here's a 2x life-size bust that is currently being seen outside of the ceramics building. So this semester is dedicated to learning new processes, technical skills, and hand building, and glaze experimentation. The second semester focused on the vessel, working with both thrown and slip cast wares. This cup is thrown with high fire porcelain, and the other part of the form is slip cast to create a hollow built-in functional straw. Call this one cream and coffee. And here are a few more examples. All functional if you fill the cups with liquid. That summer, the faculty of the ceramics department offered me the higher education scholarship to attend Penland School of Crafts in the mountains of North Carolina. The scholarship covered all expenses for a 2-week workshop with artists Kathy King and Paul Andrew Wellness. This workshop focused on implementing printmaking techniques on functional and sculptural ceramics wares. This is a figure that I had screen and block printed images on and transferred onto the surface. And it was kind of about moving from a rural environment to the city and the idea of the broken window theory, or seeing trash bags for the first time on the street in an urban environment. So that's from Natural Bit Building in Kansas City, as well as windows and trash bags and telephone wires. Here are a few more images. Junior year of ceramics, students choose between sculpture and vessel. The sculptural side focuses on tiles for the semester. We are working with even more processes, encouraging conceptual growth and more experimentation. Here's an example of me discussing my work with my professor and head of the ceramics department, Carrie Esser. This picture shows one of our bi-weekly meetings where we're able to talk one-on-one about progress and get feedback on resources, discuss technical elements, and receive professional advice. I was also able to work on functional wares while taking an elective course. This is an image from a social practice elective where the class worked with an organization called Cultivate KC, where we visited local refugee farmers in Missouri and made work based on that experience. So the shoes are from a kid of one of the farmers at the location. And all work that was done was donated to this organization and auctioned off at a charity event. All of the proceeds went to the local farmers in order to buy grain and resources for their harvest. This experience gave me insight into the artist's role as an activist in their community. Other opportunities off campus include assisting visiting artists. Professors will often provide these opportunities through KCAI's network with local galleries. This is an image of classmates and I helping Robert Harrison. Then for almost 2 years, I've also worked at the H&R Block Art Space, the museum affiliated with KCAI. My freshman year, during the orientation meeting, I walked up to Beverly Ahern, who is the manager of operations there, and I just said, I would like to work here. And through that connection, I was hired on the summer before my sophomore year. And I've learned a little bit of everything from working at the art space. Anything from installing to deinstalling artworks, both local and international artists. I've worked on the gallery's collection by doing condition reports and assisting in the reconstruction of their digital archive. I've performed artist research for exhibitions, worked one-on-one with visiting artists and curators, and more. Most recently, I participated in an internship with visiting artist Danielle Tegader, who is from New York and worked on a large-scale wall drawing and object installation over a 4-day period. Here's an image of other interns from multiple departments at KCAI discussing the exhibition. And that's also the curator, Rachel Smith. Another great opportunity that Phyllis brought up is right across the street. The Durwood internship at the Nelson Atkins Museum of Art is a paid internship exclusively for KCAI students. It's offered in multiple departments at the museum, and it is accredited through the institution. My first Durwood internship was lighting and design. I assisted in converting the museum to LED lighting from halogens and fluorescents, illuminating casework, as well as doing light readings on artwork for conservational purposes. This semester, I am the fabrications intern for the Nelson Atkins. Currently, we are deinstalling the Eyes of Picasso exhibit and preparing for the next show. In this internship, I have assisted in art handling, wall repair, casework, and pedestal construction, install and destall of cycling pieces, and working in the Nelson's collection, which is exciting, let me tell you. And next spring, I'll be working in the executive office at the Nelson Atkins. In this position, I will be assisting with internal and external communications, drafting museum publications, and related tasks. Through my experience at the H&R Block Art Space and my internships at the Nelson Atkins, I truly feel that I've been able to touch every little corner of the museum and gallery experience. And through my experiences at Penland School of Craft, I have gained insight into the life of a full-time resident artist. These experiences have truly broadened my understanding of the career paths provided through earning a BFA at an institution like KCAI. So as I start the summer leading into my senior year, and you all start considering your future academic paths, I would like to leave you with an idea from my freshman year here at KCAI. My first year writing seminar professor, Jordan Stempelman, started the class by bluntly putting, "Aren't we all here because of a good experience we had as a kid?" We all had that one experience at some point in our childhood where we recognized, hey, I am good at this. I like this. I've continued my academic career at KCAI without doubt, and every downfall has inspired me to push harder and further. Much like the younger me who loved to prove people wrong. If you are strong enough to take the leap and build the supports as you grow, I promise that you will achieve more than you ever thought possible. Thank you, and here's Colin Keller.
Do I use the keyboard? Okay. I've never seen Paulina or Reagan's work before. It was really cool. I loved it. My name's Colin Kettler. I'm a senior in illustration, as you can see. I'm from Kansas City. I grew up not too far away from here. I'm going to talk about my work from when I was in or applying to school in my portfolio and up until now. So out of high school, I took a year off, and then I went to a local junior college called Johnson County Community College. And then I spent a semester at K-State University, and while I was doing that year, I decided I wanted to go to KCAI specifically for film. And so here I am. But when I was in high school, I was all sports all the time. I was kind of a punk, and so I didn't have much of a portfolio. I didn't have much of an art background. So when I started, when I came here for an admissions interview, I was like, well, what should I do? They said, well, just take pictures and use some of the work you had. So I didn't have much of a cohesive work, but I started taking pictures, taking photos and doing a little bit of film. And I had some drawings from K-State drawing class. And when I went into foundations, it was an amazing experience for me because I didn't have much of an art background. So I got to learn what the art world was really all about. I started doing lots of drawing as expected. And I was around so many new people, and the class sizes are small, and you get to just be with the freshman class. So you get to know people really well, and you get to create with them. And that's a really good shared experience. And you get to learn about people's backgrounds and the way that they are. And it was wonderful. And so I started getting better and better at drawing. And I started doing more and more drawing. And often I would sit there and think, how in the world did I get here? It's the last thing I expected, but it was amazing. It was a really great decision. This was some of my final work in foundations. And I continued to take photos through that whole thing the whole time. And it started to become a constant influence in my work. And by the end of foundations, I had new choices to make because I had new experiences. And I decided that drawing and making that my primary focus and painting would be a better fit for me. So I went into the painting program. And this was a picture of my studio and some of the first paintings that I was making. And my teachers, the teachers were really great. Jonah was specifically a teacher that I had, and he was great at asking me specifically, what's your voice? What's going to be your artist path, and what's your vision for all of this work, along with teaching me the painting process and how the techniques and everything. And it was very personal to me, and I got to pursue things that I wanted to pursue. And I found that I'm a very sentimental person. I like my old memories and old friends. They're very important to me. So I was kind of making work about life, my past life and my new life, as I took still life things from my old room and old my old cleats, and was literally painting them as kind of like, this is who I am now. And that was the beginning of my sophomore year. That was my painting shirt. I call it my jersey. It's my locker room painting. But I was becoming nostalgic kind of in a little bit of a negative way. And I was kind of in a slump at this point because there was just a lot of change. And I wasn't responding very well to it. And I needed to make a change in my life. So I was trying to explore how to paint things a little bit more lighthearted, draw things a little bit more lighthearted. That's a ballpoint pen drawing. And how to make things and paint things in a grateful way, and to still honor or explore those memories, but honor them instead of be kind of sad about them. So I was trying to do that by painting things and drawing things realistically, but also at the same time using subject matter that I love. That's my sister in the middle. And I was so excited to go to studio and paint people that I loved. And my sister, I take random pictures of her when she's not expecting it. Lots of them. So I was kind of making this series. There's my painting. Not as good as the picture, but it still worked out. But it was a really fun thing to do. And so I was taking these photos and exploring this idea with my classmates of how to paint things in a grateful way, and how to even use the paint itself as like a way of being full and rich. And as I just painted more and more, I was improving and improving. And my junior year, when I started my junior year, this is one of the last things I was doing. I wanted to try new things, and so I started doing wet media and watercolor, and I was doing these J.M.W. Turner paintings, master studies. He's one of my favorite painters. And I was going out into the landscape and painting, and so I was a wonderful discovery for me, was plein air painting, and it was in a lot of ways kind of the answer to a lot of problems that I had that I was seeking. So I'd go out and do these watercolors and come back in my studio, make them into oil paintings. And yeah, it was a way for me to not completely focus on myself anymore. I could actually be in the moment and focus on relationships with family and friends, my relationship with God and people that I love. And the things and events that happened to get me to where I am, and focus on this is who I am now. So it was awesome. And I have this fascination with the landscape because it's so self-satisfied. It is what it is. And beautiful things can happen whether there's people there to see it or not. And it's so content in that way. And I think that a lot of times these paintings were a way for me to practice being content. And I valued that a lot. And around this time, I decided I wanted to finish my time in illustration because I wanted to focus more on client-based work and commissions and just kind of getting a different perspective, a different thought process. And so this is the last painting that I did my junior year in painting. I called it Painting Playground. It's pretty fun. But when I got to illustration, when I landed in illustration, my work became more narrative focused, and I got to use digital process and watercolor and some paint along the way, and it became more of kind of story. I was also in a comic book class, so that was good. There's an alarm clock comic. I think everybody at some point makes a comic about an alarm clock that wakes them up in the morning. It's very relatable. And I started doing these GIFs that were really fun. It was kind of like something fun to do, and also got to use digital process. And I was also being able to use my photography, which was something that has carried me through and kept my work personal. And so there was a lot of different things happening, a lot of new things that I was being exposed to. Guys hanging on. But yeah, so it was cool. And then there's me swallowing the sun. But my freshman year, so this is my freshman year, I did this drawing when the Royals were in the World Series. Good times, good times. One of my friends, or a person that I knew through mutual friends, was coming over to watch the games, and he was like, I work at a t-shirt shop, I'm a designer, and I need a drawing and of a cityscape. So he designed the shirt, and I did the drawing, and it was really fun. And it was a really great experience for me to have a drawing out in the world. There's my fiance with the shirt, really great. She's got one of them. And I had this local connection to a local bakery, at McLean's Bakery. So I was doing throughout all this process, like these chalkboard menus, which were fun. And that was a really good connection that I had. And through that, I got to do a mural on the side of the building. So this was some of the sketches. And it was a big old mural, like 12 feet tall and 14 feet wide. I can't remember exactly. But murals are great because you get to create a little bit at the beginning, use creative energy, and then just paint for like the rest of the time. And it was really fun. Here's the finished product. I didn't do the hand lettering. The designer at McLean's did the hand lettering, but so it was a collaboration. There's a little mouse in the corner. But illustration requires you to get an internship. And so I got to work something out at McLean's Bakery, and you can apply for a new internship if you can create one. And so I got to work with them and do more design work that I had never really focused on before. And it was really helpful for me to have to go out and get an internship and kind of get that experience. And I got experience with running in small business, and I got to focus on their cake department, which was awesome. Throughout this whole time, I kept painting, but I was doing more digital painting. So it was kind of in the same vein as it was before, but I kept doing digital work and learning more about that. And I had all these different directions going at this point: design, murals, painting, just all this stuff. And one of my teachers gave me some really great advice, and he said, I was like, is this all right? Like all this stuff that I'm doing, this direction. He said, well, your success is individual to you. You know, different people have different views of what success might be. And so you can take the direction that you want to do. And I think that was throughout, and I've heard other people talk about this a lot, is KCAI focuses on the personal student and really rallies around them, what their interests are and what their vision is, and helps them get to where they want to be, and then puts them in the position to succeed in that. So I kept doing these digital paintings. And it was very freeing to know that, so I could like do digital paintings and you know, pursue murals and pursue some design work as well. This is for a visiting artist assignment. He's got nothing on his mind. And there is also a class called Micro that I'm in currently. It's supposed to be set up as a micro agency. So the class itself gets work from outside clients, and then they create work for the clients that, you know, they bring in the work. One of the clients is Coterie Theater. It's a youth theater in town. And so we had to do the posters for them. These are just ideas, and one of them got chosen. The Becoming Martin poster got chosen, but Popper's Penguins was a little bit too old, they said, the old age range. So it was cool to get that experience of like, you're supposed to take all these things into account when you're creating something, but also make it your own. So it's challenging, but it's great. So the Art Institute has an event, and they hired the class to, at the end of the year, they hired the class to do some promotional stuff for them. So I was doing some drawings. The Kansas City Zoo is putting up a new mural and a touch tank exhibit that they're creating. So I got to do some concepts for that. Didn't get chosen, but I still like the work. It was really fun. And I keep doing murals. I've done murals throughout ever since I did that first McLean's mural at a dental office. Nothing flashy, but you know, really great experience. POW martial arts, sign painting, and it's fun. I really like the process. One of my teachers, the teacher at Micro, actually, he had a mural at an apartment complex, and he set me up with this. He recommended me for a couple murals that they needed. Not my designs, but I got to execute the murals itself, and so it was a really good experience there. That's the reception wall in there. I haven't gotten a great picture of it yet, but and this is just a digital painting I did this week, finished on Wednesday. So yeah, in closing, I have a bit of advice for people that are starting, students that may be starting or continuing. Hold on to the connections that you make along the way and the friends that you make along the way, and be kind to and respectful to everybody that you meet, you know, at all times, because I have the job that I have at a t-shirt shop. Charlie hustles the t-shirt shop, and I love my job. I love the people that I work with through somebody coming over for Royals games, you know, and so you never know when opportunities will come up. And I've got the murals going, gonna get married in the summer, so that's a lot. But things are good, and it's partly because I have kept those connections and been respectful to people, and they can recommend me for things. And so I hope to get recommended for more things in the future. So yeah, thank you for your time.
Can we give another round of applause to the students because they did amazing? Thank you guys so much.
It's going to be difficult for us to
Yeah.
follow.
Now it's up to us to
We've
do a good
had
presentation.
So it's on. All right, let's do it.
Alrighty.
So Sylvia and I today would like to now sort of take this full circle for you and show you now what our students are doing once they leave the school. And we're working together because Sylvia's more of a newer alum. I'm an older alum.
From the photo department.
Yeah, we're both from photo. And we would like to share some alumni success stories for you. As Phyllis had mentioned at the start of this presentation, the question, what can I do when I get a BFA from Kansas City Art Institute? We are going to answer that question for you. Oh. Do you want to switch sides? Because you're going first. I don't know why that feels like it's the right way to do it. Sorry, guys. That's Lori. Oh. There we go. Okay. Awesome. Excellent. We each have a mic. We have a mic.
So I'm going to start off by sharing a couple recent and semi-past or established alumni. So we'll start off with Layden Galacia. He graduated from illustration, and I have to say with Layden, he is a freelance illustrator that is working in all areas in the United States, you know, moving from Kansas City, his hometown, going to New York and establishing great connections and opportunities to build his brand working with this specific idea and identity that is now being transitioned into various spaces to the West Coast. We have the other brothers who graduated from animation, and they worked together where they met in animation, and now they collaborated on their senior thesis, was awarded, and then opened up their own animation firm, essentially in Kansas City, to provide opportunities for others who wish to pursue a different type of animation process, which is either claymation or stop motion. We have Nathan Newfield. He is actually one of the coordinators in the Bill Studio, which you'll have an opportunity to visit. And he graduated from the ceramics department and was actually accepted twice to be a resident artist at the International Ceramic Center in Hungary. And then he also was able to receive these amazing commission opportunities around the nation, but also in Kansas City. So this is a recent one where he was able to create this elaborative ceramic installation that's going to be present in this restaurant, which is a really beautiful opportunity. We also have Boy Boy. He graduated from Fiber, and they actually are a studio resident in the Kansas City area. There is opportunities in Kansas City for residencies, and so a part of that, they were able to then extend another opportunity to receive a Rocket grant that was in collaboration with another alumni in the painting department, and they were able to open up this alternative interactive installation space called Alter. So that was an opportunity for installations, performance, sounds, interactive experiences to take place. And this is great for a lot of students who are starting to have this cross hybrid with multimedia. So those that are very interested in these interactive sessions, this is a good space for those moments. We also have Shaniqua Brooks. She is an alumni from the Fiber department, and she's very special in the sense that she was recently accepted as a recipient of the inaugural Young Arts Daniel Arsham Fellowship. And this is a really great opportunity. She won $20,000 to fund for her practice, where she's able to really continue pursuing fiber, utilizing these very thoughtful materials, specifically synthetic hair. So right there's an example that she was producing and working on during her undergrad at KCAI, and was able to really build this very thoughtful and conceptual conversation and this, very interpersonal connection, and then extending that into a graduate program at SCIC, getting to work with another faculty member who graduated from KCAI.
I want to interrupt you for 1 second, just because I just want to point out with Shaniqua. I met Shaniqua at her high school, did her portfolio, and I remember saying to her, well, Shaniqua, like, what's your dream? What do you want to do? And she said, well, there's this artist, and his name is Nick Cave, and I would love to work with him. And I said, he's an alum from Kansas City. She said, no, I didn't know that. And so I, of course, pursued her. She came to the school, and she actually worked with him then for her MFA. So I just want to point out, like, we were able to, it's like, that's your dream. We can do that.
Yeah. So this was a really great opportunity for her, because during her time working with Nick Cave, she was able to then incorporate different approaches to fiber and textile making to construct more garments or sculptural pieces that's speaking, very culturally, socially about, her practice. We also have Heather Brown. She is an alumni from the filmmaking department, and Heather is really amazing because she's an award-winning filmmaker based in LA, and she has been able to work with various industry-based companies, and it was able to work with a lot of great films, such as Bad Grandpa, Any Day Now, The Mindy Projects. She was also the director of photography for Yes Please. So there's a great opportunity there for those in filmmaking wanting to work in that industry. We are able to have that bridge, so that way, if that's something you wish to pursue, we can build that connection right in there. We also have R.T. Smith. He's a graduate from or an alumni from the illustration department, and he is currently the Starlight Theater as a marketing coordinator, and also as a graphic designer and direct liaison for the Broadway tour management in New York. And what's really thoughtful about Art T. Smith was, you know, in illustration, they were working as a graphic designer at the World War I Museum, and then from connections, from conversations, he was able to build these other connections with these other spaces in Kansas City, and was able to transition. So I think what's really thoughtful is that depending on the space that you're in, you're able to then utilize it in a different area to, again, really expand on that CV, but also those skill sets. And then we have Jahida Aguilar. She's a graduate from the painting department. And what's really interesting about Jahida is that she was very interested in social practice, working in a community-based area or process. And so in painting, she was able to also major in social practice. So that way she's really utilizing painting as a tool to create these opportunities and engagements. And through that, she was able to receive a Durwardship internship that then led to a full-time position in the executive office at the Nelson Atkins Museum. In addition to that, she was able to work for the Picasso exhibition. So there's really great opportunities, again, going back with the Nelson being right next door because of our great relationship and understanding our students' work ethic. They were able to receive those positions, again, after graduation. We also have Melanie Mitchell, another graduate from the painting department. And what's really interesting about Melanie was, you know, utilizing writing and really wanting to speak critically about, you know, the art world, the events, the opportunities. She was able to build this arts program and also a platform called Informality. You know, it started off in this one small space and then receiving a rocket grant to fund it so that way it could be maintained and function. So that way it gives other students an opportunity to provide a writing or some passage to describe about an art exhibition, a program, a lecture. And through this, there's been a lot of opportunities for our students to utilize creative writing, to utilize their art history major. So that way, again, there are these type of spaces for them to gain that practice and exposure. So that way, again, those connections and opportunities can expand. We also have Brittany Ficken. She is an alumni from photography and art history. And what's really thoughtful about Brittany was utilizing photography as a tool for curatorial opportunities. So she was very interested in creating exhibitions, having these programs that's really speaking about contemporary times and the way that we're engaging with various works. So she was able to have these spaces in Kansas City, utilize them as her play force. So that way, as she moved into art administration, where now she is an administrative coordinator at the Headland Center for the Arts in San Francisco. She's able to now work with international artists and is able to converse with them to give them opportunities for studio spaces, exhibitions, and to connect with other artists in that area. We also have Travis Carell, who's also an alumni from the photography department. And what's really nice, he's working at the 8183 studios in the downtown Crossroad area as a photographer and retoucher. And I think what's really thoughtful is that for Travis, coming to KCAI in the photography department, learning the conceptual matters and really thinking about the ideas that really helped him to transition into these industry or advertising opportunities where they needed someone, while you can photograph, you also need those ideas. You need to really think about the way you're conversing about, you know, every type of process, not just one way, but all in the round. So he was able to work with various clients such as Cadillac, Mini Cooper, AMC Theater, and that helped him to really, you know, dig deeper into how to look beyond just an image or just taking that photograph. So these are just some examples that he was able to implement. We also have Madeline Gallucci, and she is an alumni from the printmaking department. And what's really interesting about Madeline is just the work that she's making and how it's being expanded all around, not only in Kansas City, but nationwide. And she was able now to push her practice as being a self-employed artist, being recognized by various galleries and represented. So this is a good opportunity for students, you know, that are wanting to have that gallery artist practice, learning and connecting with those and seeing, you know, what do they come across? How do they overcome trials? And then how are they able to find that path that works best for them to get those opportunities to exhibit their work in those more traditional gallery spaces? And then we also have Sierra Berry, and she is an alum from sculpture and the creative writing department. And I think what's really beautiful about Sierra is that she's really very intimate about, you know, having sculptural fabrication work also incorporate creative writing, using writing to really add this very thoughtful and intimate connection. So it's really adding this, you know, not just this dimensional piece, but really speaking evocally about, you know, these objects. You know, these are domestic objects you find in your home, and she's able to reconceptualize it. And of course, through writing, she was able to really transcend them a little bit further. And, you know, right now she's currently working as a designer and fabricator at the Design Fugitives in Milwaukee. But I think what's really amazing, especially from her practice, is that she's really being intimate about her objects. And again, it's that opportunity to really push beyond just that practical matter, but having those conceptual ideas really evoke them even further.
And this is Hennessy Luther. Hennessy graduated from our sculpture program, and it was one of her dream to be an Imagineer for Disney. So when she graduated from sculpture, she went to Orlando and she applied to work for the companies that do all of the theming, not just at the Disney parks, but also at Universal Studios. So she was hired quickly. The reason being is she could work with any material that they put in front of her. And she was very quick to make the connections between those materials and with the theming. So she's moved up very quickly in this company. She started out, if anyone here has been to Orlando recently, at Disney Springs, which is sort of like the downtown outdoor shopping area at Disney. She did all of the signage, which you're seeing already, sets for the beautiful little cake store. She also did, there's a reflection pool. It was her idea to grind up mirror and put it in the concrete that then lined that pool. And it creates this beautiful, really wonderful lighting effect when the sun hits the reflection pool. She also, her and another alumni were the designers and fabricators for transforming part of Disney's Hollywood Studios into the new Star Wars land that's going to be coming up. So here you're seeing the sign that she created for the launch bay. That's where you go and you can get signatures with Chewbacca, Kylo Ren, and Darth Vader. Also, if anyone recently has gone to Disney's Animal Kingdom, this sounds like an ad for Disney, sorry. Disney's Animal Kingdom, the new Pandora land. She did all of the signage and all of the theming. So if you ever go there and you're walking through, they did this unique thing where they took all of the lights and they look like they're actual like organisms, or she's added textures of like alligator scale or dragon scale onto all these light forms. And what's great is at the evening when people go through, they love these lights so much. People are kind of picking the scales off the lights. So she will now forever have the job. She goes in at night when all of these parks close and glues scales back on into Pandora every night. Dream job. Jordan Nickel graduated from our painting program, but again, you're seeing here how a student can work two-dimensionally, three-dimensionally. They can make more intimate objects, but they can also do murals or environments. Robert Lugo actually came to us because he was interested in graffiti and tagging, went through foundation, took a workshop in clay, fell in love with the process. He now makes these exquisite vessels, very elaborate, but he's still bringing that love for graffiti or tagging now onto the surface of those vessels. He's getting a lot of international attention. He was just featured on the cover of Ceramics Monthly magazine and is featured as one of their top artists of 2018. I think so. Paul Smith, a student that I met in high school, he actually, I sat down and did a portfolio review with him, and he was sort of a little quiet and shy, and he said, I brought you a bag of plantain chips. And we sat and ate plantain chips while looking at his work. His work was, he was knitting hats. He would take the hats, dip them into slip, which is liquid clay, fire them, and in the firing process, all of the fiber burnt away, and he was left with these sort of sculptural hats that all had this very tactile knitted feel to them. So he came to us, graduated from our ceramics department, and is now being featured in exhibits all over the world. He's been ranked as one of the top 30 Black artists under the age of 40 by the Huffington Post, and is showing everywhere. And he would be a great artist actually to jot down his name and maybe follow on social media.
And I think one thing to note too, we are having an Open Studios, this really thoughtful art exhibition and programming in Kansas City, and he's actually been selected to be a part of that. So he'll be back in Kansas City to produce more work.
Nick Cave graduated from our fiber department, and he was making garments, not garments that you would necessarily see like coming down a runway, but garments that function as wearable pieces and also as musical instruments. These were called sound suits. You can't go into a contemporary gallery anywhere in the United States today without seeing one of Nick Cave's sound suits. And so he's a prominent artist. We just this last year had more of his self-portrait piece at the Nelson, and he'll also be part of that. Is that
yes,
correct?
he'll also be a part of the Open
And
Studios.
he's been selected to, this year with our graduating class, receive our honorary doctorate award from us. Heidi and Christian. Christian came to us from California, graduated from our sculpture department. And Heidi was a local student. No, Heidi came to us from Oklahoma, I think, maybe. And she graduated from our fiber department. They met here as students, fell in love, and got married. And they lived in New York for a while, and they decided they wanted to sort of create their own studios. They started their own business, where now they are making high-end, one-of-a-kind wallpapers. They're featured in Starbucks throughout the country, other high-end boutiques, stores, galleries, different law offices even, and their company is located in Arkansas. Monina Velarde graduated from graphic design, and she started out by doing work, well, right now her new job is she's a senior digital designer for the New York Times. Prior to that, she was design lead for Hillary for America. Randy Martinez came to us from California, graduated from illustration. He now lives and works in Hollywood, and he does all of the posters, billboards, signage for all the annual Star Wars convention. So if you're ever going to that, you're seeing the big billboards. Those are his pieces. He also does posters that are collected every year, and he signs them. He's at all of the Comic-Cons and Star Wars conventions. He also does trading cards. If you're collecting Upper Deck cards, he did the Alien anthology, and also has a new game that's put out by Upper Deck that you can get at Barnes & Noble, where it's based on sharks in movies. Kim White graduated from our photo department and went on to work for Pixar. She's been working on lighting for movies, working her way up. And if anyone this last summer saw Cars 3, she now has top billing as director of photography for Pixar. If you happen to see the movie Inside Out, she did all of the lighting for the character Joy. Paul Briggs also graduated from us from illustration and is now the director and story supervisor for Disney Animation. He's worked on Frozen, Big Hero 6, and Moana.
Excellent. So that concludes our alumni presentation, and we'll bring back Karen Townsend.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hey, well, this is a full day, right? I didn't lie this morning. We're gonna pack it all in. So this really concludes the more formal part of our day here on campus, but there are still plenty of things to do. So I just want to go over a couple things so you know where you can go next or what options you have. These are also located on your agenda for the day under optional events. So in Epperson, or the room that I am in currently, for those of you who are here, we're going to have a financial aid presentation for parents and students, anyone interested. It's going to be a financial aid overview. If you are interested in talking about specifics with your students' financial aid package, you need to fill out the orange card, slip it in a bin on the way out, and we will call you to have a one-on-one phone conversation when we can spend time going over your individual situation. Okay, so that's in your packet. That is going to happen again in Epperson right after I release everyone out of here. At the same time, we also have campus tours. They're actually going to be straight out front on Roland Commons. There's going to be students out there with signs. Those are going to rotate throughout the afternoon. There's going to be a couple offered so you can hop on a campus tour. There's going to be self-guided tours of our foundation building. There will be plenty of students to show you where foundation building is. There's 4 foundation faculty over there. You'll be able to walk through the studios, see the work the students are currently doing. It will be great for you to do that. I highly recommend it. You can get a living center tour. Again, all this is going to meet on Rolling Commons. I encourage you all to see the David T. Beals studio. It's our Fab Lab. We have a special little gift that maybe looks like that little frog over there. So you can go see how all the CNC routers work and laser cutters and all that good stuff. And then we welcome you to go see our BFA exhibition, which is up in the H&R Block Art Space Gallery. And that'll be up throughout the day. So we're really here and around. Just check the times on your schedule for when things end. But really, most of these things are going to go on throughout the afternoon. And lastly, and most importantly, if you have an awesome time at KCAI and you would like to come next fall, you can fill out this card and stop by our table. We're happy to take a deposit today if you all want to do that while you're here. I also want to take 1 second for those of you that are in Epperson and those of you that are in Irving. Any deposited students who are going to be KCAI students in the fall, can you stand up? Yay! We'll get to know your classmates. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. We're here all day. You can decide where you'd like to go for your afternoon. Thank you so much.
All right, so I'll leave this up for a second and then Lori can start.
Thank you. Yeah.
And it's
Sure, you Phyllis.
part of this, right?
Okay.
So it is, yep. And she can either use the arrows or
Thank you.
either way.
Yeah. Yeah, I do. It was actually one of the still life things. Yeah, it was like my old desk. Thank you. Yeah. Right. No, it was good. I did. Yeah. Yeah. It was awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, good attitude goes a long way. I've definitely learned that for sure. Nice to meet you.
Colin, thank you so much.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty good. I feel like it's been a good day so far. I haven't even. Yeah. Awesome. Well, it worked out. God. Yeah. We did it. Sorry. Did you get out of there by 5?
Yeah.
I copy and pasted this once. I'm gonna go to the registration. It was like a public colors. Yeah.
We were really pretty good on time.
Thank you.
Yeah, right? It was too many full time. She's from so she was
Yeah.
Oh, sweet. So you stood up with the crowd.